Hello and welcome to The Bridge. Today my co-host Zach are going to be discussing a British soul singer named Celeste. Before we get to that, what are you drinking this morning, Zach?
Just finished my first coffee. I think I maybe made it too strong because I've got some heart palpitations happening, and so now I'm drinking water.
Very good. I'm working on the Americano. I ran out of milk, so no latte today. That's it. The Americano is a little healthier version of it, but anyway. So this album, what can you tell me about Celeste?
Okay, so this album is, like you said, by singer-songwriter, soul musician Celeste. It's her debut record called "Not Your Muse." She's originally born in the United States, but when she was young, returned to her mother's native UK and is now based in London. However, she's also got a Jamaican background. Her father was Jamaican, and yeah, so
I think
she,
just a note there. The reason she moved back to England, from my understanding, is her parents separated. So she went and lived with her mother, and I think that's important for context later on with the album and how her father lived in America. From my understanding, maybe Jamaica, away from her, and so her relationship with her father is a topic of discussion on this album. So I think it's curious, or at least interesting, to note that she spent her life living with her mother, but we'll get more to that later.
yeah, and just to add another detail, her father died of lung cancer, I think, when he was 49. So she's got a complicated relationship with her father that, like you said, shows up on the record, which we'll get to. However, she grew up on a healthy diet of American jazz and blues. And so on this record, you can hear influences of Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone, these sort of early pioneers of jazz musicians or jazz singers that sort of made the step into the mainstream and into I wouldn't call it pop music, but popular music at that time. And so there are certain songs on this record that are far more pop influenced, I would say, or something that you can immediately imagine as hearing on top 40 radio. Songs like Tonight Tonight, Stop This Flame, Love Is Back.
Mm-hmm.
But as the album progresses, and we should also mention it's a double album, and
Yeah,
so it
we'll get to
runs
that.
at so it runs at about an hour and 20 minutes. I think it's an hour and 18 to be exact.
Hey, little note here. Just wanted to jump here and say that we review the deluxe version of the album. Even though at the end we will be giving reviews from the standard edition versus deluxe edition, and the deluxe edition comes up as a bit of a conversation piece as we go. And I just want to note that that there is a standard edition available, and we will talk about that as well.
But as the album progresses, it sort of sheds this skin of popular music, of mainstream music, and really dives deep into Celeste's jazz and rhythm and blues influences.
There's definitely a lot of that. This is actually a pretty hyped album, I would say. There's been a lot of expectations. She's just
Mhm.
breaking out. Like I said, this is her debut album. She's had singles released. She's had EPs. There's plethora of those, but this is her first release in terms of album. I know she won an award at the BBC for most promising up and comer. So there's a lot of eyeballs on this album.
Yeah, that's right, and, like you said, she released an EP in the past. In 2019, she released an EP called, Compilation 1.1, and then other songs have trickled out as just, single releases, and, all or most of them feature on this album. However, there are a bunch of new releases as well.
Yeah, there's
So
some movie tie-in songs, I believe, as well. She's been kind of like busy. She's been prolific, even though she's new, in terms of getting in there and getting her feet wet and working with producers and getting her name out there and her voice out there. And Yeah, she sticks a lot of those on the B side of the deluxe album.
Yeah, so I think this is her debut album. It's ambitious. It's a double LP. And at the same time, some of the songs that she released have become so popular that I think for people who are early on the Celeste train, who are aware of her and like her music, they would feel a little bit. They would feel a little bit slighted if these really popular songs that she's become famous for, that's shined the limelight in her direction, didn't feature on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that this is a deluxe album.
Mm,
It's a double LP. There's two sides to it. You mentioned the EP that she released. Most of, if not all of those tracks are on this album. I think on the second half mostly. How do you feel about deluxe albums? Like, how do you approach them?
well, even the best deluxe albums, like double LPs, they're, they require a lot from the listener,
Hmm.
and it's asking a lot, because it's asking you, "Okay, here's an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half of music." You're giving up an hour and a half of your time, and so you want it to be worth your while.
Right.
Um,
It's hard for, I think, an album to grab a listener's attention for that long.
yeah, and so, like I said, this release comes in a peculiar position because she's already garnered some fame
Hmm.
from writing and releasing famous songs, and so I can certainly understand wanting to put them on the record, and I like those songs,
Yeah,
right?
I think those songs,
And
those singles that she's released are actually, on the most part, the highlights of the album.
mhm, and so it's a hard balance. What do you say? I mean, the other thing is this: with albums that are this ambitious, there's always something to go back to, There's always something to rediscover in the records.
Right.
But
There's a lot of new content or songs that pop out to you later on after uh, follow up listens.
mhm, and, also there's I think maybe a tendency for double albums or deluxe LPs to become sort of these sprawling records that lose coherence, but
Hmm.
I don't think that happens here. I think, the pace of the album is very deliberate. A lot of the popular tracks, like, the ones that I listed, for instance, "Tonight Tonight," "Stop This Flame," "Tell Me Something I Don't Know," and her most popular song probably, "Strange," all
Hmm.
occur in are all songs that occur, like, within the first 6 or 7 tracks on the album.
Right.
Mm, a lot of the deeper cuts come far later, and like I said, it sort of begins to shed the jazz pop skin and gets into more deeper jazz R&B cuts. And
Okay.
really she starts to showcase, in my opinion, her chops as a soul singer.
Let's uh let's talk about our first impressions with the Celeste and the artist. I know for me, you brought her to my attention. I hadn't heard of her before. This is frankly, I guess I have to be honest here. This is not a genre I particularly go to. Um, Neo soul, British soul, R&B. That's a genre I'm not very fluent in. I don't do a lot of soul albums and listening in my casual listening, in my personal life. It's not a genre I mesh a lot with. I find it a little slow. I find it a little one track at sometimes. There's a lot of powerful singers out there. I think there's a lot of very talented singers out there. So when you get an album like this, I think the highlights are going to be your songwriting and your performance, your emotional abilities to like perform. I think those are going to be like the key things that I'm looking for when I go into an album like this to make it stand out amongst the crowd. So my first impression, I did a light wiki read. I find out that she's British or she was British transplant, I guess. and she's got that soul. She's working with an accomplished producer who does most of the production on this album. And I listened to a little bit of her vocals, just kind of get what my taste. And she's a powerful vocalist. She has great range. She reminds, I think there's a popular comparison. She reminds me of Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, well, just pump the brakes for a second, because
Sure.
even though, and she's been compared to Amy Winehouse in her native UK. However, even though people say it as a compliment, I'm sure for her it must sort of be annoying to live in the
Yeah.
shadow of Amy Winehouse's popularity. And
Mhm.
also, I think it's important to realize that she's a black woman's who's steeped in the history of jazz musicians and uh, black African American culture in the United States. And so when I read that comment about her being compared to Amy Winehouse, it seemed to me like to be a little bit of whitewashing, you know?
Okay. Okay. I didn't see it like that. But I could see where you're coming from. She
I
has
don't.
more influences than Amy Winehouse. Like Aretha Franklin. She has a lot of powerful black women in history that she pulls from. So to be more openly compared to something a little more contemporary like Amy Winehouse is a little doesn't give her the full context of her voice. I think an
I don't.
easy reference for people who are more familiar with the more recent uh, Amy Winehouse and her work for people to kind of get an idea. A little bit whitewashing, maybe. I just think it's more of a contemporary analogy that people make.
For sure. I mean, I don't think anyone makes the comparison with Sinister Intent,
Hmm.
but it's sort of an unconscious form of whitewashing, you know? Why not
Yeah.
compare it to Leanne Havas, who's also R&B singer from the UK.
Okay, that's
She
fair.
released a big album last year with the hit single "Bittersweet."
Um, Another topic I wanted to kind of get into before we get into the album itself. And this will be something that we're going to really touch on as we go through because it's a crucial part of this album. It's her voice. And since we're on the topic kind of these kind of comparisons, and what's merit, how did you kind of feel about her voice? How did you find her her range and the ability for her to perform and reach your ears?
Yeah, so she sings oftentimes in a bit of a higher register, I guess you could say, but there's one specific song, a song like "Love Is Back," where the verse and the chorus have very different. She goes between a lower register and a high register in her voice, shows a great range in her singing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the penultimate song on the record, "Hear My Voice," she hits some of her most highest and soaring notes, and is for me one of the most memorable tracks, and left me with um, really left me with a deep impression about her voice after the record was over.
I think she also. I think she's pretty measured. She
Mhm.
doesn't like. She obviously can hit those high ranges, but I think she generally sings in like a mid range, and she also does a lot of like that raspy, wistful, low range that you're going to hear in a lot of like those older black soul singers that she's obviously uh, well versed in, like the Nina Simone's and whatever. Um, I find that to be kind of the highlight is when she goes into that lower, wistful, kind of like forced but like raspy um, range where she sings. I think it's kind of haunting, and I think it's very very well done. General, I think she's a great singer. I think that's nothing can be really argued with that. I think that's a objective fact. Is she is a great vocalist, and that will sell this album and a lot of these songs on that merit alone. Just her singing is great and great range. There's a lot of different places she takes her vocal skills on this album. So I think for a lot of people, uh, that's what they need for entry. You know, for me, I'm going to need some more songwriting that's a bit compelling, some interesting songwriting in general of terms of lyrics and songwriting in terms of actual musically and how it's composed, and for this to stand out to me, because I can fully agree that she has great vocals, but again, there's a lot of people out there with great vocals. What makes her different and what makes her stand out? And as we go through this album, I think I will comment on how I feel she does with this.
Yeah, to your point, I think you're right. She's the sort of deeper tones. It makes her a very moody singer, and there are some very moody tracks on this album where that really shines.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first track, the album opens with a track "Ideal Woman." Um, how did you feel about the kind of like the opener? How was your first impression with this song?
Okay, so my first impression with this song, I thought the lyrics, contrary to what you were saying about the songwriting, were great, and I found it to be some of the most compelling songwriting on the album.
I'd like to clarify. I'm not saying from my previous statement that I thought her songwriting was bad. I just want to give a context for how I was approaching this album and how I went into this. Is I want to be wowed by the songwriting, and I want the performances to take me away. That's how this album is going to win me over as someone who's not generally a soul listener, not generally a neo soul listener. This is not a genre that generally I go to, and I want to be clear about that as I go through this. That I'm kind of looking at this album and this performer a little bit from the outside looking in. This is not something I think I would generally pick it off the shelf myself. So I just want to stress that as I go through that. That's what I want when I'm going into an album like this. I need good performances. I need good songwriting, and I need some compositional stuff to bite my teeth into. Some good chorus work, stuff like that, to really for me to take someone like me who is not well versed in this genre of music to get hooked and receive it with open arms. Not that as we go through this, I'll reveal kind of how she did. I think not that I think that she did bad off the front. That's not exactly what I meant with that comment. So I actually do agree with you. Ideal Woman. I did think this was a well written song. I think it's very sparse. I like the strumming. It's very the strumming did a lot of work in creating a tone, and I think that there's a lot of instances throughout this album where the instrumentation is sparse at times. Not some of the tracks we'll get to, but the tone and the mood that the instrumentation creates to kind of uplift the vocals is pretty good on this track, and I think I really liked it. Specifically, the strummed guitar, I thought did a lot of work here.
Yeah, I agree. The minimalist approach to instrumentation on "Ideal Woman," and it occurs again on the title track, "Not Your Muse,"
Mm-hmm.
really, yeah, places the focal point on her voice and plays into the sort of there's a grim darkness to this song in particular, I found,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of it's a song that criticizes every guy who sort of, yeah, has placed a woman on some sort of pedestal and, try made her out to be something that she's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to read a couple of the lyrics, she sings, "I may not be your ideal woman, the heaven in your head, the one that's gonna save you from all your discontent. Please don't mistake me for somebody who cares." And, those are some pretty cold and icy lyrics, but, I think it gives it sends a very important message, and, speaks from the perspective of a woman that it's a voice that you don't hear very often.
There's something I came upon when looking into this song is she talks about how she wanted to write her songs like a dialogue, like a conversation. Um,
Hmm.
and so this is one of those songs that really exemplifies that for me. And there's a few others as well that it does feel like a conversation she's having, or just a dialogue she's having with not just a man, but men that she's experienced in her life. Similar to a song later, the title track, "Not Your Muse." She might not be the ideal woman, but she is who she is. You know, and not in that kind of like toxic way where like I'll do whatever I want. It's more like I am who I am. I know I'm not perfect, but who is? I'm not your ideal woman, but I am who I am, and I have worth and I have value within that space. And I think that's a very powerful song to be starting off of, and a great tone setter for who is Celeste as you continue to listen to this album.
Yeah, I think a lot of more popular music today, written by female singer-songwriters, it doesn't have such a mature tone, and
Right.
it can sometimes be more vulgar
Hmm.
and a little crass. Whereas, like you said, there's a sort of it almost seems like she's singing in a dialogue, and she has a very critical voice about unwanted responsibility that a partner's fantasies or expectations or imaginings of who someone is places on them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was a beautifully written song, and I think that it also works really well as we get into the next song, Strange.
Right. I think Strange might be the most powerful song on the album. And even though the entire time that she performs the song, she is very measured and she's in her, like, a little bit of the low registered. But this is probably the song that most people might be familiar with. I think this is probably her most popular song.
Yeah.
Uh, Content wise, it's about the evolution of relationships. It's really relatable as love generally is to a lot of people. This conversation about how a stranger can turn into a friend, into a lover, and then back to a stranger again. You know, and she just kind of, she croons a bit about, hey, isn't that strange? And it's got this lovely chorus on it. She's doing a great performance. This is a well-written song. This is probably the best well-rounded song on the album. I can see why
Yeah,
this is the song that is really pushing her into the limelight.
certainly the most heartbreaking song on the album, and, like you said, it's sort of about the fatal cycles of, or the fatal revolution of relationships. I think it comes in stark contrast to Ideal Woman, where she has a very critical and dark tone, and then suddenly on this next track, she shows this vulnerability and sensitivity. And because of the way the tracks are laid next to each other, side by side, I think it really emphasizes the sensitivity on Strange and makes it powerful.
Right, and this and more songs as we go through really kind of exemplify the complexity of a person. I don't think these are, well, yes, they're contrasts, but I don't think they're like hypocritical contrasts. I think these emotions and feelings can exist inside the one person very easily. Um, so I also read up a little bit some comments about her writing this song, and she wrote this during the L.A. wildfires, and also during that time, she went and visited the hospital that where she had last seen her father before he had passed. And so I thought it was very interesting how she takes these very heartbroken emotions and she takes it and puts it into a song that isn't about those topics. The song is not about her father, and it's not about the LA Wildflowers, but she takes inspiration for her performance, and how she delivers the lyrics of the song. The song is a love song, like we just noted, but the fact that she talks about those two things and how those things like inspired her to write the song, I think it's very interesting. The dynamic level of songwriting here is like she's writing, kind of the more poppy appealing love song, but she takes these real emotions from these things outside of that and places it into that song. So I think that's very interesting, the way that she takes heartbreak and these emotions from other areas to really bloom her performance.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I didn't know. It draws from other experiences that are unrelated to the topic of the song that she's writing, and uses those feelings to drive the mood of her songwriting and her vocal performance. That's really interesting. And considering this strange, I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but a strange relationship she had with her father. It's interesting to, yeah, consider the song as being influenced by, paternal love, or the love between a father and his daughter, and a daughter and her father.
I think that there's other songs here that we'll get to that are more focused specifically on that relationship.
Yeah.
But to take like even just a little nugget of that emotion and bring it to this song, and to make it, to bring it to the next level, I think is a really talented and mature approach to that. And I really enjoyed reading that. I thought it gave me a lot of respect for her as a songwriter when I came across that little nugget of information. The next song, but Tonight I thought was a really great pacing, because this is a song that's very different from the previous two. The production completely shifts. I thought it was very interesting, actually, in production, how the drums will really change a song.
Yeah.
But as soon as these drums come in, it gives a purpose to the song, gives a direction, a mood. She's got a great vocal melody on the chorus. I really enjoyed the song. I think it really added a variety right after the second track, which was very somberish and heartfelt, and the previous song, which was a little more cold, calculated, but still kind of within that same bubble of content, of the feeling and performance, I guess. But this is the first one that really kind of like, this is like, movement. This is like groovy, it's very catchy.
Yeah, I mean, this is as soon as this song comes on, we've arrived at the jazz pop area of the record.
Mm-hmm.
And which is quite obvious from, like you said, the tempo that's set by the jazzy drums and the horns in the background, compared with like a song like Strange, which uses, a morose violin and piano keys. This is the song that I picture people listening to while, yeah, driving home from work in London or something like that. It's just, this is classic top 40 radio, but it's a
Right.
super catchy song, and it's an example of how, pop music doesn't have to. It can have older influences. It can draw from people like Betty Davis, or, yeah, like a Billie Holiday, or Sly and the Family Stone, and even though it's a pop song, it feels like a mainstream song. It doesn't feel commercial to me.
Not in the very American trend at the moment. I would say it lives outside of that.
No, but ironically, it draws from has a bunch of American influences.
Yeah, I mean contemporary. Well, I guess you can mention contemporary American artists that she definitely also inspired by. But I would say the landscape of modern contemporary pop music is a little to the left of this.
Their influences are from American jazz and soul musicians from the late '60s and '70s.
Right, right,
He ends
exactly.
up sounding more American than American artists, for God's sakes.
Right. This is. I made a comment here in my notes that I think goes throughout this album. and kind of comments a little bit of the pop nature of this, is a lot of these songs came off to me a little workshopped, a little too workshopped at sometimes.
Like a little too clean. Production was a little too clean.
Not quite too well. Yes, I guess that's a part of it, but I mean more clean, but it's also like expected. I didn't hear anything instrumentally that really experimented too much on this album. Everything felt like it was in the block that it should be in. There wasn't any left or right wing swerves here or there. A lot of it felt a little workshopped to me. A lot of people like this, a lot of people like that, a lot of people like this. Put that in there, put that in here. A little more mechanically put together of an album in terms of how to sell it. I think comes up a lot in this album. So this is the first time I felt like there was a little bit of a workshop nature to the songwriting of this album.
I don't know if I'd go so far as to say workshopped, but the one thing I would knock against the record, and it makes me wonder, like, is it necessary for a record to have a sort of progressive sound to try to musically have one step into the future in order to be a great record?
You can be proud of the genre that you're in. That's a little different than I think what I'm trying to say.
To me, she's just operating within her genre.
More of that comment of how it feels a little workshop comes in the structure of the album, I think, and a little bit of the song topics, and a little bit of what she chooses to touch on and how the songs are built a bit. Yes, within the genre, but even other singers within the genre kind of do a little bit more in an area. I feel like this is a little safe in terms of how everything's put together.
Well, I mean, at the same time, she was only born in 1994. She's only 26.
Mm-hmm. She has places to go. I think some of my critiques of this album come from I feel like it being a little overproduced. I think she's made a name for herself, is a rising British star. She's got a lot of eyes on her. I think that kind of scenario where she's in, she's got to be nurtured by people around her and by labels to present her to the audience of the world. And I think there are some choices that I think maybe not her choices, and maybe not things that she would have done if left to her own devices. That I think you'll find a little bit on this album.
Yeah, okay, so, with Stop This Flame, again, another more fast-paced song. This time, instead of the horns, we're getting a more energetic piano, which I really like, and, she starts hitting some higher registers during the chorus.
Yeah, I noted that she's a little Adele on this. That's kind of the immediate sound that I got. I thought the production was good. I thought that piano that you mentioned comes out firing, and it sounds different than the other tracks so far. So far the pace of this album is pretty good. Even that comment I said about the little workshop, that's only a slight grievance at this point. I think there's a lot of good pacing here. There's a lot of versatility. She's showing herself, as all the places that she can be. She's kind of flexing herself a little bit. I appreciate that, and I respect it. I think the chorus is a little weak on this one.
The chorus, I like the vocal performance on the chorus. I don't
Sure.
think it's the highlight of the track. I think the highlight of the track comes with the introduction, when it just kicks off with that sped up with those fast piano keys.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this bridge, which everything's gets cut down to a very minimalistic sound. It becomes very still, and then to mark the ending of the bridge, they bring the song back to the introduction again and start with those same sped up fast piano keys. And I really thought it brought a great balance to the song, and I thought it was really mixed really well.
An interesting fact with this song as well is this is the first song that she wrote working with Jamie, who was the lead production on this album. So this is like their first track together. I do think there's a little bit of a growth, I think, as the tracks go, in terms of his ability to produce her. I love the piano instrumentals here. I just, the chorus, a little on the weak side, a little underwritten, I think. But there's definitely like benefits, like pros to the song. Like I said, she has great vocal performance. Those piano keys are really interesting. There's a lot to this track that's very positive, but this is one of those ones that I think it shows that this was the first interaction between her and her producer. That it was a little, they hadn't meshed quite as well as they have or will on some other tracks we'll go through here. I just thought this was a slightly, it's probably the weakest track so far on the album, I thought.
Okay, interesting. I don't know. I find the track kind of catchy, to be honest with you.
Sure.
The chorus, even though, like you said, it's not. Especially when you have those strong lyrics right at the beginning of the album, and then you get a track like "Stop This Flame," which is it's not diving into any sort of lyrical depths or anything, but it's a fun song to listen to, in my opinion. It's catchy. I could listen to the piano all day. It's a great song. It's just a song that has great energy. Something I'd like to listen to in the morning, or maybe on my way to go have some pre-drinks with friends or something.
That piano is like very dancey piano,
Yeah, it's dancey. Yeah.
Absolutely. The next song, tell me something I don't know.
So this song gets. Are we starting to travel towards more R&B vibes with this song?
Mhm.
That's what I thought with the horns and with drums on this song. We're starting to get starting to get more R&B vibes, and introduction of the horns on this song really places a good emphasis.
Absolutely. I thought that this was another example of variety. I was really scared going into this album of, how is it going to be a little one note? Is it going to like really pull from a lot of different places? Like, what's the variety of this album going to be? And at this point, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy with her ability to go into all these different ranges and do like a more R&B song on top of like these other dancey or poppy songs that she's done or more jazzy songs that she's doing. So you can tell that she's got these different influences that she's pulling from, and I'm happy to hear another song with some more variety.
Yeah, I really like the end of the song. There's like it's very rhapsodic between her voice and the horns. She sort of just gives these great vocal performances. She's not even really singing any lyrics, and it pairs so well with the horns. It just has a great R&B vibe.
We're going to move into Not Your Muse, which is the title track, which is, again, another track I really liked. Not Your Muse is a great vocal performance. Back on the strum guitar, that was really nice. Strange, like that strum guitar situation, obviously a little different. There's some harmony in the song that hadn't really been emphasized until before this. A bit of a subdued performance, emotionally checked. Some great reverb sound swirling in the background that at some points kind of comes out a little shoegazy. I really liked it. I enjoyed the song. Again, up until this point, up until track 6 here, I'm really liking this album. This is a great album.
Yeah, this is another one of my favorite lyrical performances on the album, and it sort of returns to the theme that she opens the album on with "Ideal Woman," and yeah, the lyrics are very much about power and possession in relationships, and so one of the lyrics goes, "Decorate me, adore me, baby. I need you to liberate me. I'm not your muse."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you said, they sort of they take a more sparse musical approach. It's more minimalistic again, like the first song. And you said there's synths on the
Not
track?
like synths. There's like these like these reverb sounds that sound like some sort of distorted instrument. I couldn't quite put my finger
I
on it,
think
but it
they use
swirls and kind of crackles near the end and then disappears. But it comes back and forth in this song once or twice.
the way they mix the violin and the guitar on this track,
It might have
it
been one of those,
it creates that effect,
right?
and it has this sort of like it put me in the mind of like a sexy Prince song, and it
Okay,
had these sort of like it was like a glistening rain is sort of
hmm
the image that came to mind.
right, right. This was a good track, and like I said, not many complaints about this. I remember. I think it was one of the former weeks you mentioned how you listen to albums front to back in one sitting, and because that's how they're intended to be listened to, I believe was your phrasing. Did you listen to this album front to back, one listen?
The first time I did, but I was reminded of something Tool said because they said that their records aren't supposed to be cut up and split up and butchered and be listened to on a track by track basis. And then, however, I'm not sure if it was Keenan or somebody else said, yeah, but somebody confronted us one day and said, when you play live shows, do you play the whole albums from back to front to back? And they were like, no. And so then they sort of retracted on their initial position about their criticism on Spotify.
Right, right.
But even like an album that is as large as this, when you put it on, you're gonna eventually pick your favorite tracks and then listen to it. I mean, album like Stevie Wonder's "Songs in the Key of Life."
Hmm.
It's a legendary album. It's a double LP or maybe it's
Yeah,
triple.
absolutely.
You're gonna listen to that front to back every time you put it on.
No, but you can listen to one side or the next side, and I think that's kind of how it was a little structured. I was curious about that because I remember you saying that, and this is where my first listen ended. I stopped right here at Not Your Muse. This is my first listen. I was like pretty happy. I was like, this is really good stuff. This is, I'm not generally a soul singer guy. It's not really the genre that tickles my fancy enough, but I was really enjoying this. I thought there was great chorus work, great vocal work, production. It wasn't experimental or anything, and it's not that I expected it to be, but it was versatile. And so I was really happy up to this point. And next time I came back and listened, I started on Beloved, and I was kind of and then Love's Back. I really like that song actually. I think it's one of the best songs on the album. It's got some simple satirical lyrics, kind of that way that you fall in love so quickly, and then you get out of love, and you're kind of like, kind of sappy, but all of a sudden you turn around and you're falling in love with someone else all over again. And she kind of makes fun of that. Love is back. You're back on the love train, poking and prodding on like some of the foolishnesses that people go through when they're dating and finding someone to be with. So I thought this song's great. I think the chorus work is really great. Instrumentally, I think it's one of the stronger tracks. The drums are back to give some mood and momentum. A lot of swelling brass that they've used on this album. There's a lot of little snippets of trumpets and descending piano that they put on all over the place. Like this is like one of the best compositional songs on the album, I thought. Super highlight, maybe my favorite song.
Yeah, I really like the music on this track too. Love is Back. It has this call and answer between the scratchy guitar and the horns, and so it goes bop bop bop, and it creates a great rhythm, and
Absolutely.
it's, it's incredibly catchy and is really one of the best moments where all the influences come together, like the pop, the jazz, and the soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a slower tempo. It's not trying to be dancey, anything like that. It's got more of a cool, subdued feel.
Uh,
And
Maybe not trying to be dancing, but I still think it's a quite a danceable song. I thought it was very groovy. It's a great driving song. I was definitely moving around to this. I thought this was more I guess more the pop side, but not quite. Just in the terms of like, I thought the vocal melody was really good, and the chorus work was good, and her singing was great. You know, it's a great written song. This is kind of like the peak of kind of what I was looking for out of this album, I think.
Yeah, it's like you said, one of the most groovier songs. One of the most grooviest songs
It's
on the record.
after this track, I think it falls apart. Kiss is good. I thought Kiss was not that bad of a song, honestly. You know, it didn't really stand out that much. It felt like, you know, a lesser Strange, you know, just didn't have quite the emotion attached to it like Strange did. But it's a slow tempo song. It kind of exists there. The Promise kind of did the similar thing. And then again, you get A Little Love, which is the Christmas advert song that was put on the album that I really just could have done without entirely. Not that it was like a terrible song, but this felt like the most workshop thing on the album. It just felt like this is a song I wrote for a Christmas advert, and it sounds like it. You know, it just sounds like something you'd see playing as a Coca-Cola truck goes down the highway, and a big fat Santa Claus is on the side of it, and polar bears are rolling around. It just felt such like a hollow song to me because of it. Even though it's like a great vocal performance and it's a very happy, kind of fluffy song, there's not like a lot of substance here. This is where we get into Some Goodbyes Come With Hellos, and I'll let you talk about this one.
Yeah, this song. There's a couple of ballads on the record, and this is one of them. Like this is just an acoustic song. No,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a I like the song. Sparse, cut down again, like some of the other tracks
Mm-hmm.
from earlier in the album, and yeah, it caught my attention. I liked it.
Sure, absolutely. Which I should say at this point, since we're going into side B, I think side A on its own, a solid A minus B plus record. Even with some of the, I like A Kiss. You know, I generally like that song. I think of the ones I was criticizing, I think that's probably the highlight of those. I think there's a little bit of a like kind of getting tired of the whole structure a little bit. I think they don't do a lot to be versatile in the late tracks of the first side, but not a huge complaint. You know, there's still good songs. There's still great vocal performances, which I think is the core of what people are looking for when they listen to an album like this, is the vocal performances. Yeah. And she does stellar on every one of these tracks, regardless of any complaint I might have of structure of the album and kind of like what songs that was chosen to be put on this album. I think she is consistently good on her vocal performance. So again, I think there's a little bit of getting lost in the mix after Love Is Back. You know, there's not a lot of poppy songs here. A little slow, it's a little sparse. They kind of get lost, I think.
A certain level of monotony sets in.
Right, but again, once side B starts, you know, the second disc, even though that's kind of a dated thing to talk about, I think at this point with the how music is delivered nowadays with Spotify. But this is side B, which is what makes it a deluxe track, and it starts off with a great song. Just wanted to note that while we do cover side B of the deluxe album, ultimately in the end I will be reviewing side A, which is the standard edition. But we decided to cover a few songs on the deluxe since that was the prevalent issue that was found on streaming platforms. Starts off with Father's Son. I think this is an interesting song because this is one of the ones that she most directly speaks about her father. Not in a very specific way. Like she talks a lot of very vague kind of way about the situation. You know, there's not a lot of like specific details about her and her father. But she does indirectly talk about her and her father in a way that's kind of like anyone talking about them and their absentee father. And when I say absentee father, I don't mean father who left them. I mean a father who isn't there for some reason. In her scenario, her father died of lung cancer when she was 16. So there's a lot of life that happens between 16 and 24, you know? And I'm not sure of how much content he is in her life because she is in Britain living with her mother, and he is wherever he lived at the time. So this is I think that's important to comment on because while there's a very vagueness in the content of the lyrics, I think her performance and the instrumentation in the song does a lot to create a tone of yearning. And having personal experience, I can kind of feel that yearning that's there. It's not exactly outwardly stated, but this idea of this emotion that's hard to really define, but it's like wanting answers, questions answered, and not being able to get them answered. Conversations that you can't have with this person. It creates this space and this emotion that's hard to define, but she definitely creates it with her voice. It's hard for me to describe exactly that emotion, but the best I can say is it's a yearning.
Yeah, I didn't like this song so much, even though I know it's perhaps the most overtly personal song on the record.
Mhm.
But I thought the topic of the song and how personal it was, and though it has a sad piano keys,
Mhm.
it didn't really live up to the dramatic weight of.
I did comment that I thought she could have been more specific. I think with topics like this, um, the vagueness of the lyrics kind of went against it. I get what the idea is. You want more relatability, so you become a little more. You write more vague, you know, in ideas and concepts. I think this is a song I would have enjoyed her be more specific. Brought it more of herself and him in that context, and been more literal about it. I think that would have created what you're speaking about here, a more emotional tone. That was a little bit of a critique I had, but I generally enjoyed the tone that she did create.
Yeah, I mean, with these types of songs, you'd have to be careful not to, become melodramatic and
Mhm.
sort of oversensitive. And I don't know if that's why she's sort of seems like she's holding back a bit for me. And it didn't the song didn't carry very much weight or impact, just with the musical ideas, the vocal performance. And it didn't even capture me enough to, even though I knew it was her most overtly personal song, it didn't capture me enough to want to bother to read the lyrics like I did with the other songs.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit here. I thought this was one of her better tracks. I guess again, my personal experience is a little different, and so this is more of a spoken to me a little bit more, and then some other people may help to stand out a little bit. I might be a little biased in that realm, but I enjoyed, like, I guess it was piano. I thought it might have been organ. That's on this track. I thought it was pretty distant and kind of in the background, and it did a lot for the mood and the tone that she was going for. I did think that the snare was a little loud on this track,
Mhm.
but didn't distract me too much. I enjoyed the lyrics here. She talks about, could there be two of us? Could there be two of us? About her father and herself, or a father and their child, and how their traits and how relatable they are. Things that, like, even though they're not there to give those traits to you directly, there's things in your genetics that you end up being like them in certain ways, regardless. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what she's speaking to a little bit here. Um, Maybe I'm lonely, maybe you're lost, maybe I'm an echo, and maybe you're a ghost. You know,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of good content here. I think she's a little vague. I would have liked to see her speak a bit more specifically about her. I think that would have added more to the emotional delivery that she gives here, or in the content. Again, snare a little loud, not too bad. That's a little of the mixing. I thought this was a highlight track. I thought this was a great way to start side B, and I could have generally watched or heard more of this.
Yeah, to her credit, I think sometimes when people are speaking about things that are so incredibly personal, sometimes they'll veil what they say and metaphors, and so it can become a little bit vague in comparison to say a track like "Not Your Muse," which is very direct.
So yeah, the next song after Father Son is Lately, which had a feature from Got Street Park. I know you did a little research on them. What can you tell me about them?
They're sort of one of the bigger up and coming producers now in the UK, more or less.
Is this an
Uh,
individual person or a group?
I think it's a collective,
Okay.
but just looking at the producer track listing, they produced from Love Is Back to The Promise on side A, and then yeah, they already released Lately and Both Sides of the Moon on the compilation 1.1 that was released in 2019. And of the two tracks or two features on side B, I like Lately the best. I think it has the best sort of R&B groove. It has the guitar has a great funky clang, sort of almost like a wah-wah effect.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
there's like a wobbling strings to this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I really like how this song ends in relation to some of the earlier tracks on the album from side A. Her voice has a very almost heavenly sound,
Hmm.
and then with the guitar and the keys, it just makes a great pair.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I enjoyed again. Vocal performance was good here. I thought I could have done a little work on the vocal melody in the chorus. I wasn't a big fan of it.
It's a deeper cut, there's no doubt about it, but it's sort of the song I can picture listening to, driving through the city late at night, maybe a light rain falling. You can see the neon lights shining through the raindrops on the window.
Right. There's the image of someone in a beautiful dress standing on a stage with a backing band at a very fancy restaurant that everyone looks up and sees her as she starts singing and everyone falls in love with her. That's kind of the image this whole album gives me, I think. Um,
Mhm.
she's definitely like a very classy singer and a very uh, great performer. I think she definitely does a lot to stand out.
Yeah, to that point, and we brought up Amy Winehouse earlier, and I just went back last night and checked out a couple of her songs, and she has one song, it's called "Fuck Me Pumps," and yeah, Celeste doesn't have any sort of "Fuck Me Pump" songs on this record. It's a little
No,
bit she's a little more classy, you know?
yeah, there's no that crassness is not on this album. Next song, I actually enjoyed. Well, it's not the next song. But there's a few songs. The Strange. There's another version of Strange that's on here, Unseen. But the next song that I actually enjoyed was In the Summer of My Life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like love songs on the album, which it's par for the course for what this is. But this one isn't. This one is more reminiscent about her teenage years and kind of looking back at that individual that she was, and has this nice chorus work here. It's very unique. I like her delivery. It's not like super grand, but it's like very like captivating still. And this is another one of those songs I think speaks to her earlier comment that I mentioned about this being a dialogue or a conversation. And I feel like this one comes off again like that.
Yeah, this song is, she sings in a high register throughout the entire song,
Hmm.
and it's one of the more graceful songs I found on the record. It's a ballad that I draw comparisons to Some Goodbyes Come With Hellos. It's
Okay.
mostly it's an acoustic track, and it's a bittersweet song that has a nostalgia for for the past, and I love how she takes the metaphor of the summer. There's this great movie by a French director called Agnes Varda called Bonheur, which is French for happiness, and
Okay.
it takes place during the summertime. And Agnes Varda described the movie to have that sort of melancholic feeling of summer fading away, like those last brief days of summer.
Hmm.
And it gave me a similar feeling when I listened to this song.
Right, right. Yep, there's definitely that kind of yearning there as well. How did you feel? We talked about this a little bit earlier
Yeah.
with the duet with Jean Baptiste. How did you feel about the song?
Like I said, I think it's a great song. Yeah, like I said, it features as the end credits on the movie Soul.
Hmm.
And a lot of the reason I wanted to bring up the song, besides the fact that it's good, and there's another duet on the album somewhere, I think Unseen, but
Hmm.
I prefer this duet.
Also noted that I enjoyed this duet more than the other one that had appeared on the album. I thought
Yeah,
his voice complemented her better.
yeah, and he's playing the piano, and yeah, he does like pop up performances on the streets of Manhattan and in Brooklyn. And he works. He's, I think, the lead musician for one of the late night show bands, and he's putting together a musical, I think, for a black artist from New York who was popular during the late '70s, early '80s, called Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he was very famous for his street graffiti, and then also he's since then had his work hung up in famous museums and had his work sell for, yeah, incredibly crazy prices. Yeah, I just wanted to bring some attention to Jean Baptiste, his work, and yeah, Jean-Michel Basquiat. And it's great to see Celeste be able to work with Jean Baptiste, and for him to use his platform to help launch her career.
Yeah, absolutely. Instrumentally, there's a flowing piano on this track that I was in love with. I thought it was a very charming song. It's like substance of content of lyrics. It's kind of still it's part of the chorus, but I thought a lot of the personality in having a duet, how it was structured, how they went back and forth, requires some highlight. And this is one of them. I think this is a great song. Great performances by both artists. Again, as you said, you should definitely go your way to listen to some of Jean Baptiste and some of his stuff. The next song that we wanted to talk about was "Hear My Voice," which is a protest song or a protest sounding song for a movie.
Yeah, I was not aware that it featured on a movie. What's the name of the movie?
From the Trial of Chicago 7. It's a
Okay.
Netflix film.
Uh-huh. I don't have Netflix, so that explains why I never heard of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, what did you think of the vocal performance on the track?
Good. She definitely goes into this like range that she hasn't really gone into very much on this album. Definitely like some highs there. It's got that like protest, hurrah kind of performance that you want. Thought it was pleasant, but I was kind of a little irked by the context of the song to really give it the full attention it probably deserved.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, probably the strongest vocal performance on the track. The standalone vocal performance on the album, sorry. So the strongest standalone vocal performance. And like you said, it has very powerful soaring vocals that you would want to have from a protest song that's supposed to, rally people together and inspire feelings of courage and strength. And that really comes through in her voice. It's sort of, the lyrics of the song play into the strength of her vocal performance so well, hear my voice.
Absolutely. So we'll come to a close there, our more in-depth track review. How did you feel about the album coming out of this?
Yeah, even whether or not we're talking about just the international standard edition, to the first 12 tracks, or side one,
Mhm.
or yeah, deluxe edition, the conclusion of the album it just sort of fizzles out for me. It doesn't. There's no hook. There's no. She doesn't really. The tracks don't really seal. the album for me altogether. And whether that be musically and sort of coalescing all the ideas, or a track that concludes the album, or in a track that sort of summarizes the ideas on the album as a conclusion to the album. It just sort of it dies down in energy, but that's all it does. And so the ending was a little, it was lukewarm. It didn't have an impact on me.
Very good, very good. As a whole, you can give your review in any shape that you'd like in terms of, as a whole, as a deluxe edition, or as the concise side A, if you'd like, or both if you'd like. But how would you rate this album?
I think, I really like this record from top to bottom, whether it was the International Deluxe Edition that we listened to, even though, it can certainly be fatiguing because it's an hour and 20 minutes. And to your point, there are a lot of tracks that are added from other projects, but most of them all appear on the second side. Nonetheless, I think she has got a fantastic voice. She's one of the most talented female songwriters that I've heard in quite some time. And I love how she's really sort of perfected her sound within her genre.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, there are numerous tracks on this record that I'll return to again. And I'm gonna give it a 9.
Okay, very good. As a standalone side A, which is how I would prefer people to listen to this album, I would suggest them just listen to the first side. It's a solid 8 for me. Again, trying to be objective as possible, even though it's not generally the genre of music that I would go to on my own. I think this is undeniably at least a solid 8. I really think you only need to go into side B if you're looking for a little something extra. Do not recommend the deluxe edition to initial listeners. I don't think there's that much on there that's really adds to the package. If anything, it dilutes the overall conciseness and personality of the first side. It's really just kind of a hodgepodge of songs that existed a few years back, or maybe a few new ones here that didn't quite make the main album. If I was as a whole, it's like a 7 or a 6 if I'm including the B side, because I really did not like that B side in terms of cohesiveness. But I will, generally speaking, rate this based on side A. 8 for me. Recommend absolutely that first side to people who are, again, fans of a soul, a neo soul, and jazz would definitely appreciate this. People looking for strong female vocals, people who are very vocal heavy in their listening. You'll find a lot of this album. Certainly really enjoy it. I think it's a great debut effort. Curious to see how her career evolves from here, because she's really being positioned in such a way that they definitely see her skyrocketing into becoming a huge star. So be curious to see what becomes of her and her career over the next few years. She's still young, 26, maybe 24. I can't quite remember. So, she's got a wide range future ahead of her and a lot of albums to come, and I'm curious to see how they come.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Lauryn Hill, if you're a fan of Curtis Mayfield, Betty Davis, earlier Billie Holiday's, Nina Simone's, there's definitely going to be something for you on this record.
All right. Well, I'll see you next week, Zach, when I force you to listen to an album.
Interesting. Yeah, looking forward to it.